Mic check one.
Are you hearing me? I can hear you online. Can you hear us?
Mic check one. Mic check one.
Do we have someone with the PowerPoint that's going to share the screen? Do I need to pull it up here? Well, I'm muted. Well, that's not helpful.
You have it? You can share it? You can share the screen. Go online? Okay, yeah, I'm on Zoom now. Okay. Okay. I should be in the meeting and find everything. No, I'm saying like I'm in Zoom right now. If you just need to open the screen share.
Mic check.
He should be sharing his screen with the presentation. Also,
There we go. Yeah, I think I had the weird gallery participants versus the actual presentation. I think I was logged on, but okay. Hello, everyone. It's a much smaller class. Someone joked that we must be having a test
today, so guys are lucky. So today's class, I would argue, is probably a simpler class than one before. I wouldn't think it was as
other classes were. Well, maybe it's me. I don't think I need to be. I think I can be on mute and you guys can still hear me because I'm going through the microphone. Okay. So today's topic is building strength. And so that's kind of vague, but that's intentionally so. When we talk about building strength, there's lots of different areas in which we can do that. So I guess we can pull the crowd real quick. Besides physical strength, where else do you build strength? Natasha pointing to her head. Mental strength. So we generally refer to that as intelligence, right? Like problem-solving skills, learning things. Although some might feel that just committing things to memory isn't the same thing as being intelligent. It is definitely a mental strength for those who have the ability to remember things. I'm not one of them. So just discipline in general, like the ability to stay regimented. What other strength is there that we should be cultivating in our life, want to cultivate? Emotional. So emotional strength, the ability to emotionally endure things. Spiritual. I thought this would be the first one, but spiritual, right? So our ability to develop spiritual strength. So could we go to the next slide? Now, I promise you this was not intentional. I did not talk to Brother Grinnell about this, to do a little acronym thing today was not something that was on theme or anything, but the acronym is DICE. And so these are some of the four basic things that, regardless of what kind of strength you're trying to develop, will always be a requirement. And they're actually in inverse order for two reasons. Inverse order for what you'd actually do in order when trying to develop strength. The first reason is because it isn't a really cool word to say. It's not as cool as DICE. It doesn't really make an acronym. But it's actually in probably the most difficult order. So the things that are most difficult about building strength. And so we're going to talk from the most to least difficult, because the least difficult has the least to talk about. And those four things are discomfort, investment, consistency, and effort. So we'll start backwards for the quick sum up before we go into each one individually. So effort being simply the doing, the first step of anything. So whether you're building emotional strength, spiritual strength, physical strength, the first thing is to get up and go, right? I think the common one is like each marathon starts with one step. Like it's 26 point whatever miles, which I don't know how many kilometers, but it's long, it's really far. But it starts with one step. You start that by saying, I'm going to do it, and getting up and being at the starting line. So is the effort. So we understand what we're talking about when we talk about effort, because effort and investment might seem similar, but hopefully you'll see that they're distinct. The second thing, going from the bottom up, is consistency. So what do we think that means when we talk about consistency when building strength? And it's open to the floor. So repeated effort. So I'm going to pick that apart a little bit. So you can take the mic because you're going to have to defend yourself. So I went to the gym this Monday, and I'm going to go to the gym next month on Monday. And I'm going to go to the gym the month after that on Monday. We're repeating effort, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but is that building strength?
I would say a minuscule amount. I guess repeated effort based on the amount of effort necessary to achieve whatever the desired result is. So if you want to get really strong versus averagely strong, there would be a difference in the amount of effort that is, or the amount of repetition, how frequently you'd have to repeat the effort, but you'd still acquire some strength. So I'm not going to say that there's necessarily a set amount of repetition that is necessary, but depending on what your end goal is, how much strength you actually want to achieve, that would determine how consistently you would need to repeat said effort.
Good answer, because the correct answer is it depends. For running, if you want to get better at running, you will not grow. You will not grow strong at all doing once a month. Within 2 weeks, any cardiovascular strength that you've built, you will lose if you're not engaging in cardiovascular. Again, 2 weeks is all it takes. So if you stop running for 2 weeks, if you run one day and then a month later, you are exactly where you were last month when you ran, because it takes no less or 2 weeks and you've lost it. But so that's means it's going to depend on what you said, what your goal is. What your goal is. If your goal is I'm going to figure this out eventually, and I'm just going to build a lot of effort, then you're doing it if it's running. But if it's, say, a hobby that your effort is, I just want to engage in it more, and you're only getting to do it like, say, camping. If you were camping and you're like, I love camping and I want to do it more because I only do it once a year, and you start doing it once a month, you're going to get a lot better at camping. You're going to build a lot of strength in camping from an event that you engaged in once a year to once a month, you will. So you answered it perfectly. It means consistency is going to depend on our end goal and what we're trying to achieve. So that means we have to look at each one individually. So next one is investment. And how does investment differ from effort?
Effort is sorry, I think in accounting terms, effort is a flow variable, while investment is a stock variable. So effort is something that you do continuously, whereas investment is a major, I want to say investment, it's a major thing.
You're having a hard, you're trying not to use the word in the definition. Yeah. Investment's a major investment. Yeah.
Right. So investment is a major expenditure of something, a major outlay of something, in order to get you to a desired point.
So
It costs something.
yes. We have a chat too. Brother Smith, did you have something?
Yeah, it costs something.
It costs something, yes. It costs something. Now, most of the time when it comes to building strength, now investment in a financial sense, if you're trying to build financial strength, that investment is literally going to cost something. You have to take money and the general term of investment, how we often use it, you put that money in it, you put it into something. So it costs you actual monetary currency. So when it talks about strength that isn't financial, that's not a literal cost, it's going to cost you most often time. So investment, when we talk about strength, is going to be the type of investment that references going above and beyond and spending time outside of the exercise or the effort. So with weightlifting or physical fitness, you're going to be doing things like learning the effectiveness of what foods in your diet for recovery. So that's when you're starting to invest, when you're going to spend your own time researching, studying and understanding whatever it is you're building strength. So if you're camping and you're trying to improve your camping skills, you're now on your free time reading books about what plants you can eat, how to build shelters or how to purify water. You're no longer just relying on the effort of getting out and taking those first steps to improve your skills. And then finally, the most simple, I imagine, is what? Is discomfort. And that is what? Consequences of what?
Of your efforts, what it takes from you to achieve what it is that you're trying to achieve.
Exactly.
Whether over long term or short term.
Can we go to the next slide? So discomfort. And to discomfort, we have Romans 5:3. Not only so, but we also glory in our suffering because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. James 1:2, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So regardless of what your strength that you're trying to build is, discomfort is going to be a component of it. It's really simple to see when you are trying to become physically stronger. Running makes you tired. Lifting weights make your body sore. Being out of breath or cramping up from running is uncomfortable. So it's really clear. So if we were talking about, obviously here we are, Sunday school, Bible study, spiritual strength, where is our discomfort going to be if we are trying to build strength spiritually?
Giving up on our habits, giving up on our prized habits.
So I would argue that's like literally stepping out of our comfort zone. Hence the discomfort, right? Leaving comfort. So it's whatever we're used to, which is crazy. People are really weird. This will be a little side tangent. We as humans have this really bizarre ability to become comfortable in horrible situations. Things that right now, if you were to find out something, you have people were living a certain way, whether it be an extreme, destitute, if you were looking back at historical times, whether it be the Holocaust or slavery or genocides, where you're just like, how does someone live that way? We as humans, if we get used to something, we find comfort in it. So even though there are things like sin that really bad for you, you are comfortable in them because you get used to it. And to step out of that, it's something to do with probably our human psyche and the fear of the unknown and the fear of doing something new. It makes us very uncomfortable. Even if what we're leaving is uncomfortable, to go do something new is uncomfortable. So absolutely, brother, thank you. What's the effect of discomfort we have if we are trying to strengthen spiritually?
Pointing to the passage that you highlighted about the testing providing perseverance. I don't know if you want to call that a God-given means of acquiring strength, but I guess that God has set it in such a way that for our patience or our perseverance to be strengthened, you have to go through things that would provide you with discomfort. And I'm guessing a lot of the actions that you can take or the things that you're told to do as Christians will automatically put you in those positions where you have to experience the comforts of being kind, being long-suffering. Those things, those traits, if you try to manifest them, will put you in circumstances that force you essentially to go through that discomfort that leads to that growth.
Like what? What are those circumstances? And it doesn't have to be Brother Stephen if someone's got an example of what that circumstance is.
All right, I can show one. In high school, for example, as a Christian, I wasn't supposed to cheat. And as a result of that, I would not help the other students to cheat. And that led to some ostracism from some of the students. And I felt emotional discomfort as a result of that, being considered the outlier because I was against these individuals. So I guess that's a small way, some discomfort there from a spiritual sense.
So the sort of discomfort that comes from, we'll say, a lack of peer approval or just peer pressure in general. Yeah, peer pressure is one of those double-edged swords. It's actually not all negative. Like peer pressure can cause people to behave as much as it can cause them to be misbehaved. But absolutely, so if we are against worldly sinful things because we want to be improved spiritually, we're trying to grow, we will experience discomfort. We had a conversation not too long ago about if we are Christians doing the right thing, will we be persecuted? And that persecution is going to manifest itself different, maybe even to the point where we don't feel comfortable using the word persecuted, but we will be uncomfortable. We will experience discomfort if we're growing spiritually. We have to, because it's a tenet of growing strong. And the Bible recognizes it, like in the scriptures here, it points out that these are the things. The suffering is what is a result of strength. Because if you just succumb to the world, then the world has no problem with you. And it's not going to cause you to suffer. Well, you're like one of us. We have no reason against you. So peer pressure. What's another discomfort we'll experience or scenario that would happen?
I guess exercising discipline mentally and physically. Sometimes finding quiet time. You require quiet time to sit and read your Bible and to meditate and focus. And often your mind will wander, or for me, what else is to do in the home or something. I just a discipline to sit down and concentrate for a half an hour, 45 minutes. It's a little discomfort, you know, it's not easy. And you know, so that I would say that for me, that's my challenge.
So, yeah, I think a way to sum that up would be we have to, the uncomfortable qualities of making someone else's priorities our priorities. We have to give up our priorities for God's priorities. If you're talking about spiritually, you have to give up, even if you're building strength, if you need to go to the gym, you have to reprioritize what you're used to. And that's always uncomfortable because there's a reason we're prioritizing things that way. We prioritized, I say we, I'm meaning me. I prioritize TV over going to the gym because that's more enjoyable, that's more comfortable, but it's not more beneficial and it doesn't build any strength. So what about, we touched a little bit.
Failure.
Fear of failure, yes.
Dealing with failure. Because when you try to get stronger, you might not succeed, you might fall back, and every now and then you might have that issue. So that's the problem that we might have to deal with, is that discomfort that comes from here and striving, but I'm not getting there. Would that be a factor as well?
Yeah, I think that might be one I'm probably working on right now is in the Marine Corps, we have 2 tests a year. We have a physical fitness test, which is a general concept of physical fitness. It's a 3-mile run. You have to do as many crunches as you can in 2 minutes. And you have to do a max set of pull-ups. So a perfect score is a 3-mile or a 5K in 18 minutes. 20, depending on your age, is roughly at 21 pull-ups and 120 crunches. And then the second half of the year, which is what I'm getting ready for, is the combat fitness test, which is more geared towards things that you might have to engage in combat. One of those exams is a half-mile sprint or 800-meter, 880, I don't know, something like that. Sprint. And the perfect score for that is 2 minutes and 48 seconds for me in my age group. And man, I hate going out to practice for it because every time I do it, and running's this way, every time I do it, all I can feel is not just the discomfort of running, it's a discomfort of knowing I'm still not fast enough yet. And I'll time myself and I'm way off. And I have to I run practice in my normal running gear, in my running shoes. But the test is done in cami pants and boots. So if I'm running that slow in running shoes, I know I'm running slower in boots. And part of the discomfort isn't just I'm gonna be out of breath and it's gonna physically hurt. It's that I know that if I'm not there yet, if I'm failing, that I have to be faced with that. We could do a show of hands. How many people have not done something simply because they know they don't want to try it because they know if they try it, where they'll be is not where they want to see they'll be, which is crazy because not doing it also means that we'll never get there. Yeah, so definitely, brother, absolutely. Dealing with failure is very uncomfortable. One that I wanted to mention, it was kind of the line of peer pressure. What keeps us, and I'm making the assumption that we are kept from doing this, what keeps us from just walking up to someone that we know doesn't know Christ and going, let me talk to you about the gospel? Is it because it's super comfortable to do that? Was that?
I say the discomfort of one, how you may be perceived, how they might respond, the awkwardness that might ensue, especially if it's like a stranger. I guess if it's someone who has come into your building, it's still a little discomforting, but if it's someone that you don't know and you're just like out of the blue, that I would feel some discomfort in general, whatever conversation it's going to be. And then when you put it on something that I guess is a little touchy for some people, that would add some discomfort. Thank you, David, for holding the mic.
He's doing a great job. So self-consciousness is to be conscious of yourself, which is what that is. Like it took me a long time to realize what that word was saying when you say self-conscious. It means you're aware of yourself. And most of the time that's really bad. It's really bad to be a public speaker and be aware of yourself. It's very bad to approach people or be in social situations and be aware of yourself. People who are very open and like to talk and have lots of friends, they have very low self-consciousness. Means they have very little understanding of how they're being perceived, or because that's how they're able to just be who they are. Otherwise, it's when you're like Talladega Nights, I don't know what to do with my hands, and he's just like, he's just talking to the microphone. He's so conscious of where are my feet, where are my hands, how am I standing? Did I say that weird? That gets in the way. And then we do the same thing with spreading the gospel. Do they think I'm weird? Is this not the appropriate time? Do they think I'm some sort of like cultish type person? And that self-consciousness is really negative because it's the focus is on the wrong person when you're being self-conscious, especially when spreading the gospel. The focus is inward. It's about you. How am I being perceived? Not about what does God want and not what does this person need. But that's uncomfortable. Pick the next slide. So we're moving from discomfort to investment. And you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. Jeremiah 29:13 and Acts 17:11. Now these people were more noble-minded than those in Thessalonica, for they received the word with great eagerness, examining the scriptures daily to see whether these things were so. So I like Acts because I think it demonstrates the difference between investment and effort. The effort would have been listening. I'm here, I want to listen. Great. That was even in accepting it. Wow, that was really good. The investment was the proof, diving in every day. They daily to see whether things were so. And that's such a great example of investment. So now here's the investment's a really important part for the lesson when it comes to the overall topic of self-improvement. And because this is where a lot of it happens. Discomfort is something we acknowledge as Christians. If we're building strength spiritually, emotional, whatever it is, discomfort is going to happen. So when we experience it, we know that this is fine, it's acceptable, it's going to be a part of my growth and my strength building. So we have to acknowledge it. But a lot of what we need to do is here an investment. So if we're trying to build spiritually, we need to invest. How are we investing? How should we be investing?
Yes, you should be investing, and Stephen will explain further.
Thank you, David, for that excellent foundation. The study is one of the ways. Copying from the Bereans, they looked to see if what Paul was saying was accurate. And I think sometimes in our learning, we are very comfortable in identifying certain scriptures that point out certain things, but we're not interested in finding out why are these scriptures said, like what's the foundation, what's the context, etc. And I think that we limit how much we can grow if we don't have a wholesome understanding of the scriptures that we use to get us through particular things. And if we did, that would help us in growing more effectively. So I think that's one way, studying more broadly and more deeply.
So someone other than Stephen, if studying and deeply studying in the way that was the example was here, we've studied and we've learned something. What is that doing? What does that do for us as Christians that makes us stronger? It's not simply the fact that I know something, I learned it. What is happening that allows us to be strong because we're deeply studying?
Well, when you put in your time, you invest your time in studying, you can, it makes you stronger, whatever comes at you, whatever doctrine or anything that you have to, and you encounter anything out there, you can back it up with scriptures. So your time, you put in your time to study, well, that is the best investment.
So there's a time component that does a lot. If we're filling our mind with the scriptures, it means we're not filling it with something else. Maybe something bad we're not filling it, maybe something more neutral, right? If I'm filling it with this, then I'm keeping it on my mind, which time, it's the only way to do that is time. Do we have another? Yes.
Can I look at it from the cost point of view? That it must cost you something, whether it is, as you say, the time, it could be costing you, taking away from something else you want to do. So that's the kind of direction I want. That is that, or actually physically some money to go and do something.
Yeah, can you say that part again, brother? I didn't understand it. You still there? Could you say that last part again? Is he coming? Is that what? Well, I'll wait for brother. Hopefully, Mike back up. The other thing that it does is it helps us to remove doubt. When we accept things blindly without defense, we might believe it at the moment, but the second someone questions our faith on that topic, we aren't developed enough to combat it. Not necessarily combat it back to back or face to face, because it's not always necessary that you become confrontational with someone, depending on the discussion, but combat it internally, because that's an opportunity for someone to say, well, you don't even know what you're talking about. You believe something, you don't know why. And you will internalize that and you will start to develop doubt. And but when you're like, no, I've done my studies, I've researched this, I believe this for a reason, then that keeps you strong, that develops strength, because you're not relying on the sort of like my parents' faith concept. Well, this is what, or like my grandparents' faith. Well, grandpa always told me this was the way it was, so I just believed them and accepted it, but you never learned it for yourself. And so that when someone questions it, you don't have the defense, like what grandpa said. And that's not beneficial for our development.
It may be a small way, but I think because we're creatures of habit, it becomes easier to do it if you keep doing it. So I don't know if that would count as being strengthened, but if you keep studying, you keep investing what it is that you're investing, because biologically speaking, it takes less over time, then that could be considered a way of becoming stronger. Now it takes less of me to carry out the same task that once upon a time, it would take a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's going to fall into the consistency portion as well. Yes.
I was thinking investing in better material, because if I read the Bible, I'm not deep like David. I just going to read it as it is in the Bible. But if I invest in and buy materials from good authors, then they help me to understand what is being said and help me to question what the Bible is. So spend some money and buy good religious material to help as you read along.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the argument before with people that the Bible's enough, right? Where it's enough, and in respects it is. But sometimes we need to, I don't think I would develop the way I have if I didn't have like a strong concordance as well. If I didn't have something that explained to me the original Greek or the original Hebrew, I wouldn't be the same if I didn't hear or read books by other Christians who helped explain things. But it just has to all be measured with the Bible. And that's a part of investment. I don't know anyone who's really invested in anything that they're really strong at, that they don't have massive amounts of resources beyond just one resource. Even if they have one resource, that's the resource and it's their go-to, they're constantly investing in other things. And that's a great example. You have to invest beyond just, well, I picked up Genesis and I read all the way to Revelation because there are words in there that are the best we can translate. Because doing a whole paragraph to explain that this word means this doesn't make sense. So you have to be able to invest into documents and other books that help explain and help us grow as Christians and explain concepts that maybe it's the same reason we come here on Sunday and have someone tell it to us. It's the same reason we get together as Christians and talk together, which is another way we invest. If you're a runner and you really love it, you're probably part of a runner's club. If you're a weightlifter and you really love it, you probably have 2 or 3 guys or girls that you go to the gym with. You don't do it alone. No one who's really strong in an area that really enjoys it does it alone. So we have, we'll call it fellowship. We have resources where we dig into resources, and we have in-depth study. What are other ways that we can invest in our spiritual development, spiritual growth, and that strength?
So sorry. Materials, or I don't know what the word you'd use for it. So for example, like if you're weightlifting, you probably have protein powder and stuff like that that you would use. I don't know if that would also fall into the idea of the concordance or study Bibles, the specific
I would think that would,
materials, or that would.
yeah, I get what you're saying. I think that would fall into something different. You're right. I think that would be the type of thing where people sign up for a scripture of the day, right? That's not like a resource, like a book that you're using to study. You're putting things in your life that support your habit, right? You're going to invest in things like that.
Okay.
Maybe you've got more examples that might work, but that was the first thing I thought of, like people who are like, well, I'm going to sign for this app and it'll tell me every day, here's a scripture, things like that. You have other ones that
You have other examples?
Yeah, examples that would be like the protein powder or running shoes or like the low friction shirts and stuff.
That was my thought. Like any tangible thing that costs you is not something that you'd and it supplements the activity. It's not a need. So you can go to the gym, you can work out, or you can run with the type of shoes that you have. But then there's a particular shoe that you presume will help to make the process more effective. So that was my idea. Something to supplement the process. It's not a need, but you perceive that if you invest in it, it will aid the overall development of the process.
Natasha?
Getting a prayer journal.
Journal?
A prayer journal.
Journal.
So,
Yeah, as an example of,
yeah.
Yeah.
If you fight in sleep to pray, if you're writing out your prayers, you're not going to fall asleep because you have to be up and doing it. So that could be another example of an investment.
a good example. That's not one I had thought of. I have a book that this is my second book. Actually, I'm a little probably embarrassed because when I was baptized into Christ over a decade ago, I've only got 2 books full, but so Sunday lessons, the ones I write for myself, but as well as the ones that are given to me in Bible studies, this is where the notes go. Writing down helps you remember. That's why I'm a big proponent against kids in school typing everything and using a laptop or computers. Physically writing letters helps you remember more than typing it on a keypad. And so engaging in some sort of writing is beneficial. Some of the things that are investment. Yes.
I think partnering with somebody also helps. There was a program we had with the ladies some years ago called Telepal. So each day you would call somebody and go over scriptures, and that helps with the investment.
Yeah, I think you'll find that any strength, to include spiritual, strengths that are internally developed, so first the external, like cardiovascular, well, I guess that's internal, but not what I mean, like the physical, like so emotional strength, discipline, these strengths that are really more of like internal mental conditions or conditions of the heart, a lot of them are structured with the assistance of one other person. Not only one other person, but there is one person at least that is that specific support structure. You see it most common in people who are trying to get over addictions. They have one person they're accountable to, but it works in all sorts of areas where people are trying to strengthen themselves. If you're trying to strengthen yourself with discipline or anger, having one person that you have agreed that we're accountable to each other is really beneficial. And you see it a lot in those. So it's obviously extremely beneficial in spiritual matters if you, besides just having a huge fellowship, all these people around you that help and you invest into what you're doing, to have a one person that you know, like, I'm accountable to someone else besides myself. It's truly helpful.
I don't know if this falls in a different one, but going, what's the right word to put it? The use of expertise, whether through systems or through learning. I know you can do in-depth study on your own, but let's say, for example, I want to strengthen my cooking ability. There's an in-depth study of learning recipes and watching videos, etc. And then there's now going to a cooking school, aligning myself with whatever existing expertise system is there so that I can get better at the craft. So I don't know if that would fall under the same in-depth study or if that's something separate.
I mean, I think it's a form of in-depth study. It's definitely beneficial. It's what Bible study is, right? It's what we're doing right now. It's going, we're not just gonna sit at home with our Bible. We're not just gonna go to church and have like a lecture. We're gonna get engaged in something that's more interactive, like a cooking class would be. And it's another form of these investments. And I would say, yes, it is outside just the normal study. Another thing that we haven't mentioned, even though I think it's written on a board right behind me, is prayer. So investing in a spiritual sense, it's prayer. You're trying to strengthen your relationship with someone. You need to talk to them. And we don't have to go too far into that because we had a whole lesson on it, right? But prayer. Another thing is meditation. And now meditation is different than studying. Meditation on the word is not, I don't want to say it's not an intellectual pursuit, but it's not the same kind of intellectual pursuit as studying. Meditation crosses the border into something more emotional. If I tell you to sit and meditate on the sacrifice of Christ, I would hope emotionally you're stirred, not just intellectually. There's an intellectual component of Jesus Christ and understanding how bulls and rams didn't work. They weren't enough. And this plan was set forth all the way back in Genesis when Adam and Eve sinned. There's an intellectual component of, wow, what an amazing plan. But there should be an emotional component when you sit and you just focus on one concept. And it goes beyond just obviously the death of Christ. If you focus on the concept of how God loves us, the component of forgiveness in our worship, these things should stir up something more than an intellectual pursuit. This should be emotional. So you're engaging more of who you are as an entirety through meditation. Oftentimes, I think we get meditation confused with like acts of Buddhism and Hinduism, sitting down and like saying Om repeatedly. Meditation is something that our biblical forefathers did and that Jesus did, sitting in quiet, not just going through a book and writing notes and looking up this and going to the Strong Concordance to understand it deep. They took a concept they understood that was biblical, and they focused on it. And it's definitely one of the things that I think as Christians, we don't do a lot, and we don't suggest that we do a lot, because it kind of has this sort of weird, like, new ageism to it. But it's something that Jesus did, and it's something that, David did. Our spiritual forefathers engaged in meditating on God's word. So it's another way to invest, because all of this goes back to time. If you're doing all of these things, you are prioritizing God's desire for you over what you have. You're investing your time. And as oftentimes I hear it discussed in when it's time to give every Sunday, it's not just money we're supposed to be giving. We're supposed to be giving of ourselves, and that's our time. Next slide to C for consistency. So if you're not catching what the imagery is up back there, this is a shot group. These 3 end packs are, the bullets actually just hit that one there. That's a tight group, as we would say. That's about consistency in your shooting. And consistency is the act of repeating an action, depending on your goals, repeatedly, and over time, you're doing it in a way that sets a habitual pattern. 1 Corinthians 15:31, I affirm, brothers and sisters, by boasting in you, which I have in Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ our Lord, that I die daily. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything to stand. So these 2 scriptures are brought up because they identify what level of consistency we need in our life for spiritual strength. And it's a word that's, or a version of the word that's in there in both scriptures. So what is it? Daily. Unlike, say, running, where it's advisable you take days off, your body needs time, and weightlifting, you have to take days off. You have to take days off from, got a comment? Where'd you come from? Sister Beverly, thank you. I believe some kind of support is always needed in strengthening self. Trying to do it alone has many dangers. In Paul's letter to the churches, the brethren are always encouraged to strengthen and support each other. Thank you. And absolutely right. And I'm going to link that right, because I think that was back on the investment portion, but I'm going to link it right back into consistency. There's a reason we come together as brothers and sisters of Christ at least once a week. We don't go a week without being around our brothers and sisters. So we already have a standard consistency for the first day of the week that we come together as Christians. And although the scriptures we talk about daily, it means that daily we have to engage in the Lord. Now, daily, it might not be our meditation, although that would be great if we could. Daily might not be in-depth prayer or in-depth study. We're pulling out all the books and all the references and doing online research. But daily is the requirement that we have to do certain things as Christians. Like, unlike weightlifting or anything like that, could get the mic to the back. You're supposed to take a break, even if it's rotating the muscle group. You can do core about every day, but you can't do arms every day. You have to find time to replenish them. It's not the same thing when we're building spiritual strength. You can work your spiritual strength out, like your abs, every single day.
So for me, the consistency, I think it has a lot of benefits for me. And then I know that there is also a risk as well. So the consistency helps in terms of, so yes, I do running as well. So that kind of rhythm that you build up with consistency, especially when you're doing like the marathon training, it helps you when you hit that wall, your body starts carrying you through because you've been consistent in your training, etc. Same thing with our walk, our spiritual walk, is that consistency in terms of just practice. We counsel each other that even when you're going through a dark period, and we all go through it, we say, well, just show up. Sometimes even if you're not there, and I've been there, where it's literally let me just make sure that my body is in worship, even though, yes, my heart may not be engaged, etc. But so that consistency also helps so that I'm not straying too far. And that kind of propels me to come back. What I find for me though is that consistency, if I don't find a way to agitate and kickstart it, it can get into a complacency. So it's almost that you get into a robotic journey and a robotic way of worship. So it's always just, I don't know, like that balance is important, that in the consistency, in the daily readings and the Bible in the year and the showing up and so on, I have to find a way to ensure that it is not just a routine and a routinization of my Christian walk, but that I'm also present, that I'm actually emotionally and engaged and present.
I like that. So arguably then we would hope that there's a difference then between consistency and routine, that routine is something absent-minded. Routine is something we do without thinking. We want consistency to be something that we will turn to instinctively, but not necessarily absent-mindedly.
And something that could help with that is maybe setting new spiritual goals for yourself. So every time you achieve one goal, you set a new goal so that you are always intentional with what you're doing and you always stay present.
So goals, and that's a portion of consistency. If I can consistently run, have my schedule and I run, but if I'm not consistently tracking myself, I'm not necessarily getting better. If I'm running every week, but I'm getting slower every week, I'm not improving. But if I'm checking my time, if I'm engaging in the investment to ensure that I'm applying new things to my level of consistency, then I'm doing, we're engaging in an act that forces us to be present, because I can't absent-mindedly record time. Truthfully, I can't absent-mindedly look at my progress. Looking at progress in itself is an act that requires presence. You have to compare. It's not like I wrote down my time. You write down your time, you're going to see what your time was last. And if it was faster, you will feel better. If it was slower, you're going to feel worse. That's engaging emotions. And that's a great way to prevent apathy or complacency. Could get the last slide as we get ready to close, because it's going to be the fastest slide. And the last slide is the E for effort. 2 Corinthians 15:2. He went out to meet Asa and said to him, "Listen to me, Asa, and all Judah and Benjamin. The Lord is with you when you are with him. If you seek him, he will be found by you. But if you forsake him, he will forsake you." Matthew 7:7. Ask it and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. Scriptures that point to Corinthians. I meant to say Chronicles if I said 2 Corinthians. Point to the first act. You have to do. You have to seek. You have to knock. God is there, and God requires that first step. You have to step out. It's the beginning a walk in our Christian faith. It's you have to take the action. God is there and ready for you. The gift is ready for you, but you have to say, "I'm ready to receive it," and you have to stand up. You have to express your belief in Christ as a Savior. You have to go under the water. It all starts with that initial effort. And the same thing goes for your strength. You have to say, "I'm not where I want to be strength-wise, spiritually. So now I'm going to do something." And even though it's the simplest step, it's the easiest to explain. It is the first step. It is the say, "I'm going to do work. I'm going to dust off my Bible. I'm going to do this," and you stand up to do it. That is the hardest part, because That is the part that most people will never do. After that, it's the consistency. They do it once. They got over that one hurdle and they did it once. And then it's getting them to do it again and again and again until that effort changes from that initial effort to the consistency. Then they're going to invest. And then when they feel that discomfort, they can acknowledge that I'm here right now because I'm strengthening and I'm growing. It's easy to do that last part when it's your muscles. I feel great when I feel horrible after I've worked out. I feel great if I can't lift up my phone 2 days after an arm workout because I know I did hard work and I'm going to benefit from it. We don't feel that same way. I don't feel that same way when I feel the discomfort that comes from spiritual growth, because part of me feels like it shouldn't be there. So the last part is acknowledging that if we're growing, we will be uncomfortable and we will feel discomfort. So to wrap it all up, the acronym for personal strength, and it can be applied to whatever you're trying to strengthen yourself in, whether it's studying for academics, whether it's trying to increase your discipline, whether it's trying to increase your spiritual discipline or spiritually, or work on your own emotional strength. These are the components. You have to first want to do it. Then you need to continuously make that effort. Then you're going to start investing, but then you're going to feel the discomfort. And hopefully if you're doing all those things, you'll take the steps necessary and you won't be discouraged when the discomfort hits. All right, I hope everyone has a wonderful week. Everyone's funneling back in. Looks like there's juice being handed out, so I'm gonna get a cup of that. Hope everyone has a wonderful week. You guys are in your word and you're finding ways to maybe invest in a consistent manner. And then hopefully you feel uncomfortable. That's, I mean, as weird as that sounds to say, hopefully we're there where we find a lack of comfort. So you are dismissed. I love you all. Have a wonderful week. You on Zoom as well. Goodbye. Thank you.
May have been. I don't want to finish out about even when a response is there, I prefer to wait and see if other people will do. If that were my nature, you wouldn't need to be put in the mic by my shoulder.
Nhâm nhâm nhâm. This might be working. Oh. Check, 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 check one.